Welcome to the Orange County Forum, where newsmakers keep you informed about local, national, and global issues that impact Orange County today.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the OC Forum. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being supportive and for your commitment to our community, which is an important community, as you all know. As many of you know, I'm not one for long-winded introductions. I think that oftentimes those who do the introductions think they're more important than the speaker. And given that the speaker is my boss, I definitely don't think that. But I'll tell you a tiny bit about Rich's background, and then I'll also tell you kind of why I think he's important for the Register, especially now. And for those of you who don't know Rich, you're in for a treat today, and I suggest that after the program, you get to know him and you get to meet him one-on-one, because he's a spectacular, nice, and authentic guy. But he's also a very accomplished man. Many of you in this room follow marketing and marketing techniques kind of globally and nationally. And one of Rich's claims to fame, which he's humble about, is that he kind of reinvented the way marketing is done in Las Vegas when he was the chief marketing officer for Harrah's Entertainment. All of those emails that you get because you have those little players cards and those phone calls and those constant, like, I get a lot of them because I gamble too much. You know, that was the design of how how Rich kind of revolutionized Harrah's Entertainment and took it from what was a company that was going under to one of the most successful companies in Las Vegas. And that's the guy that we have at the helm at the Orange County Register. He's the CEO of Freedom Communications, and he's the publisher of both the Orange County Register and the Riverside and San Bernardino Press Enterprise. So that's the short bio. I'll tell you why Rich is so important to our organization. As you know, the newspaper organizations in this country today are very difficult to run. We're at a point in time where you have to put up or shut up in the newspaper industry. And over the last several years, I've been at the Register for nearly 6 years now, the last several years, the morale has gone like this. And there's never been a time at the Register where I can say that my colleagues feel more confident and feel more respected than in the last several months that Rich has been at the helm. And that's really important because, as you know, as Orange County is over 3 million people, we're the only voice, we're the only media voice that solely services Orange County. And similarly for Riverside and San Bernardino counties at the Press Enterprise, to have someone who's respected and trusted internally at the Register is critically important. And there's a lot of hard work ahead, but I don't think there's anyone better that could lead it. So with that, Rich Merman.
Thanks, Brian. That was great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Brian, not only for what you do at the Register, but also the business that you gave us at Harrah's. We greatly appreciate that. First of all, I can't tell you how proud I am to be here. This is a very important forum. And this is kind of my coming out talk. This is my first time really sort of in a forum like this, sort of sharing a vision that, quite frankly, is sort of hot off the presses. You know, we're kind of figuring this out as we go along. There's been a lot of change, and I think we have a plan. But I'd like to show you some of the things that we're working on and how we think about the business. The first thing that's the most important part about this, and something that is not lost on me or my colleagues in the building, is just the heritage of this company. I mean, you know, I worked with companies that have been 50, 60, 70 years old. I've never worked with a company that was over 100 years old. Right? I mean, if you think about back in 1905, the Santa Ana Register was debuted. I mean, it's remarkable how important this business was then and how long it's been important. R.C. Hoyle came in and rebuilt the business, built a business around freedom. Really started to consolidate up newspapers in this area, and it was just a fabulous success story. As many fabulous success stories go, many generations into their life, and in the newspaper industry particularly, you saw a drop-off in terms of the business, and Freedom Communications actually went into bankruptcy in 2009, came out of it in 2010. Aaron Kushner and Eric Spitz, two wild-eyed entrepreneurs, came in and bought the business. And I'll talk a little bit about that. They were very enthusiastic, very committed, and very excited about the newspaper industry, and really wanted to sort of shock the world. And I think if you talk to Gustavo, there might be some claims that he did shock the world, that they did shock the world. Press Enterprise was bought in 2013. At that point, we raised some money to go and buy that paper. I was a part of that investment community. I came in, I put some money in, I bought into the paper, not really knowing what was in store for me personally. And the next thing you know, come 2015, I've been asked to be the publisher and run the business. So if you think about sort of the days of 2013, 2014, there was a period of what I call entrepreneurial expansion. Right? Eric and Aaron came in and they really believed in this business and felt very strongly, and I think there's some core of it that is really important in sort of what they did, that somehow contributing quality and quantity of journalism is going to really change the way newspapers are perceived. And they added lots and lots of new sections. I mean, if you think about all these sections, many of them are gone. There are a couple of ones that are just still on here that are just fabulous and have extended and changed. So their contributions to the company were very impactful. I mean, you look at the Cal State Fullerton and the Chapman and the OC Catholic. I mean, those are a part of our core. They're a part of our DNA. They're very important to what we do. So not all of the growth were things that we pared back. That being said, they did contribute a lot of change to the company. If you think about then not just the sections, but just broadly, I mean, you know, they added the Register Connect, which was a loyalty program. We entered into Los Angeles. We entered into Long Beach. We brought in and incubated a number of magazines. I mean, there was a lot going on during this time. And the way I like to tell the story is that they got a few things right, and they got a bunch of things wrong. And over the last couple of years, unfortunately, we as a company were not profitable. And you know, we are not able to complete our mission of serving this community as an unprofitable business. And so, unfortunately, last year, at the end of last year, and quite frankly, throughout the year, but under my regime, we had to right-size the cost structure around what we thought the revenues were going to be. And unfortunately, we lost a lot of very talented people. That being said, at the end of the year, when we had a pretty significant adjustment, the rule was that we didn't change any of the newsroom or the opinion section staff. Not one reporter, not one editor, not one designer was removed from the position. We believed at that time that if we sacrificed the quality of the paper, then we would be on unstable ground. And so we just right-sized the business accordingly. We're now in a phase that I like to describe as refocusing on the fundamentals. We as an organization need to go back to focus on what we do for a living. What are the core fundamentals of running a newspaper business? And we are very fortunate because we have, in my opinion, a tremendous staff. It's a fabulous team. And, you know, people like Brian lead the opinion. Joseph's here. You see the newsroom under Rob Curley and Donna Wares. I think the quality of our journalism is very, very high. I think under the leadership of our sales teams, Wanda, Steve, others, marketing, I see a lot of my colleagues here at this table. I think we are well positioned to really provide stability in this community and to achieve growth. But it's going to go back to and away from this focus on entrepreneurial growth and more focus on what I call sort of sticking to our knitting. Let's grow, but let's grow within the context of who we are as a business, which is a newspaper company. So let me just provide a little bit of background. Maybe I should have done this at the beginning. As Brian said, I'm a former casino executive. It was a fabulous time. I joined the company back in 1998. I was a young executive. I came in because I had worked with this Harvard Business School professor of marketing. He got appointed the chief operating officer position at Harris. He took me with him, and we didn't know any better. We totally turned the company upside down and rebuilt it. But what was interesting about it is that the casino industry today gets a lot of attention for being very successful. But back when we joined, back in 1998, it was the opposite. It was an industry that was really struggling. And it's important to sort of highlight that struggle. If you look at the blue, and many of you remember the late 90s, the economy was booming. The stock market was off the charts. Not Harris stock. No, not Harris stock. It was declining. And this was a drastic change for the company. We didn't know what was going on. The CEO hired this young Harvard Business School professor. This Harvard professor hired this young consultant. And the next thing you know, we're surrounding ourselves with all sorts of people who had no context whatsoever for the casino business. And we started to fundamentally rebuild the business in a very similar way to the way we're going to take you through sort of how we're going to evolve. We fundamentally restructured the core of what we do. And the success was tremendous. I mean, you know, we grew the database. The stock went from 14 to 90. The company went from $1.5 billion company to a $10 billion run. It was absolutely a great run. So then I left that opportunity, and I jumped right back into the frying pan. Because this is the newspaper business. Just spend a minute just absorbing that, right? I mean, I've often sort of, I probably missed the business by 20 years, right? I mean, it would have been great to come in sort of in the 70s or the 80s, right? And sort of, you know, enjoyed the growth of what was going on in the industry. No, I had to join in 2015. This is an industry that has achieved a tremendous drop-off in its revenues. It is an industry that is going to require a fundamental change sometime between now and 20 years from now. Newspapers are going to have to be very different. Who knows if they're going to be printed on paper? Who knows what their focus is? Who knows anything? This is an industry that is in dire need of redevelopment. If you then look at that picture and you go back to thinking about Kushner and Spitz, you actually, quite frankly, should applaud them, right? In an interesting way, they came into this industry and said, we're going to take the risk. We're going to jump in and we're going to try something, and they did. Unfortunately, a lot of what they did didn't result in growth and incremental revenue, right? But the question is now, what do you do? Okay, so let's talk about that. Well, first of all, let's paint the picture just a little bit even. Let's make the problem even a little bit harder than that last picture, right? You probably didn't think that was possible, but let's make that. The newspaper business is one of the most crowded spaces in any industry, right? If you think about it, holy cow! I mean, everybody's covering everything. You've got the Wall Street Journal, you've got the New York Times, you've got the LA Times, you've got all these different big name groups. If you add digital, this equation becomes almost insane, right? So the question then becomes, how does one compete in such a situation? Having had a boss who's a marketing professor, one has to, when presenting at a meeting to such a boss, one has to present the case of how we're going to solve a particular problem. And the question that he always asked is, what is the white space? What is the area of this business that we actually can carve out and we can actually own? And I'll tell you something. What's interesting about that problem is that it's a relatively obvious answer. And that's the uniqueness of, I think, the situation. And that is this concept of ultra-local focus. Nobody else is covering Orange County. If you think about it, there aren't any TV stations, there aren't any radio stations. Nobody's covering it. So we want to focus on this community coverage. It's an obvious white space. LA Times isn't really covering it. New York Times isn't covering, Wall Street Journal. This is available for us. And we should do everything we can to make sure that we optimize within that community space. And we do. And I think from the perspective of our paper, I think we do a fabulous job of this. That's the good news. The good news is that the coverage is terrific. And it's what I would call Google-proof, right? Nobody is writing about the top 75 best places to eat in Orange County. Nobody is writing about the state of our veterans in Orange County. Certainly nobody's writing about Dana Point. Well, I shouldn't say certainly. Nobody's writing about Dana Point, but certainly nobody's writing about the lady that designed the first surfer shorts, right? I mean, nobody's covering it. All of these stories were front page stories. These were not hidden in our local section. These were not buried in the back. These were front page stories. This is what we do. This is what we believe to be our product. Our product is focusing on the community. Okay, so then the question becomes, that was the easy one, right? Now the question becomes, who's our audience, right? And so if you think about who the audience is, you know, you could sort of polish this up and put some perfume on it and a little bit of makeup, but at the end of the day, we have an aging customer base, right? The vast majority of people who read the newspapers, and read the newspapers across the country, this is not unique to us, it's the same for the Wall Street Journal, it's the same for the New York Times, is the vast majority is over 50. And it's pretty pronounced. Now, do we need to figure out how to get kids like Rye to read papers? Absolutely, right? We've got to figure out a way to get Steve's grandson. By the way, did you know that? Steve Cherm has a grandson? I think that applause was appropriate. I think the world is a better place. Okay, we got to figure out how to get kids to read papers. Right? We absolutely do. We've got to figure that out. I hear that every single day. Everybody comes to me, how are you going to get the kids to read papers? You know? I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea. But that's a hard problem. Let's figure out how to solve an easy problem. Let's make sure that everybody over 50 reads our paper. Right? Let's solve the easy problem. It's a product that caters to a little bit older audience. Let's make sure that we do that. And if you look at it, 65 and older, that's the fastest growing segment of the population in the United States. Right? So I'm not saying that we shouldn't focus on getting young people to read our paper. And we need to put a lot of effort against that. There's no question about it. But let's make sure that we solve the easy problems first. And the most easy problem is to make sure that the group of people who read our paper, which are the over 65, that we do a very good job of getting to those folks. We're also blessed that we work in two of the greatest counties in the United States, right? If you look at Orange County, I'm the newest entrant, or one of the newest entrants to this community, but it doesn't take many people, a brain surgeon, to figure it out. This place is fabulous, right? It's great. It's beautiful here. And on top of it, there's a lot of people that we spend a lot of money, and we buy a lot of stuff. Right? So if you're going to have a monopoly in terms of the product, and you're going to have, you know, a great opportunity to cater to a certain market, it helps to sort of be in such a rich community. Same thing with the Inland Empire, right? I mean, even more people live in the Inland Empire. They buy even more stuff, right? They spend more stuff. So all those things are good, but we need to keep evolving who we are, right? So we need to keep growing. So a lot of what we talked about was just trying to make sure that when we go back to the fundamentals of running the business, we do as good a job as we possibly can within those fundamentals. The question is, how do we build on those things? First thing has got to be through digital, right? We've got to figure out digital. And the way we're thinking about digital is probably a little bit different than the way Yahoo thinks about digital. Yahoo, Facebook, some of these other, all they want is they want eyeballs, okay? They want to figure out how to get as many people because they can monetize that. That's not what we need to do. What we need to do is we need to take our stories and figure out how to leverage digital to tell the news in the most compelling way. So I'm going to give you an example. This is a story that you may have seen. It's an evolving story over time, and one that we at the Register are very proud of. There's a series of stories called The Illusion of Safety. Are you familiar with this? Oh, okay. Well, we need to bring, where's Eric? We need to bring some papers, subscription. The Illusion of Safety. Okay, this reinforces why newspapers and reporters are important. There was a series of murders, prostitutes, murders here in Orange County. And our reporters didn't just believe that it was coincidental that they were being murdered in a certain area of the county. And they kept doing some investigative reporting and work with the police, and it turns out that these were serial murders. And it turns out that there were two of them that were doing it. The police eventually found the murderers, and it turns out that both these murderers had GPS tracking devices on them. These were people who were prosecuted, found guilty, sentenced to home confinement, given a GPS ankle bracelet, and were out and about murdering prostitutes. Now, how does this happen, right? You think, how does this happen? The reporters kept digging. They kept digging. And what did they find? They found out that nobody is monitoring these GPSs, right? Not the cities, not the counties, not the states, not the federal government, okay? And so we started to report on this. Legislation got changed, budgets got appropriated, and people started taking work. Great, fantastic journalism. How do we bring it to life digitally? Well, we put the story on the board. We give people an opportunity to go and really understand by clicking around where these young women were murdered. We give people maps of where criminals with GPSs live, pedophiles, where they live, what information is publicly available. We give people an opportunity to click on those things and actually see who's living at those homes. We're not creating any of this data. This data exists. What we're doing is we're packaging it to reinforce our story, because we think it's important to tell our story. And so this is the kind of thing that we want to do. We want to do more of. We're going to do this not just for Illusion of Safety. We're doing it. We just launched it for the Angels, in which when you're thinking about going into an Angels site, you can an Angels game, you can actually see which way the wind's blowing, right? On our site, you can see whether the wind is blowing in or out, because that might affect which side of the stadium you want to sit. Maybe you want to catch a fly ball. I don't know. Joseph, you catch fly balls? Yeah, there you go. So we're doing that. We're going to do that for beaches. We're going to start getting public information. We don't want to just provide these stories. We want people to absorb the stories. So we're putting a lot of effort to sort of figure out our digital strategy. But again, the digital strategy is within the context of what we do for a living. And I think that's the most important part. Latino community, right? We need to expand the universe of people that we touch. If you think about where we do business, Orange County, Riverside, San Bernardino, they're in the top 3 Latino communities in the United States. If you combine those, we are the second largest location of Latinos in the country. Now, on top of it, and if you're sort of a publisher of the business, you appreciate that not only do we have access to the Latino community, but advertisers are actually spending money to try to promote their goods and services to the Latino population. So it's a fabulous combination. Back in 2013, we made the decision to eliminate 2 of our brands. We changed La Prensa and Excelsior, which were well-established brands, and we rebranded them to Unidos. Unidos is a perfectly fine name, just nobody's ever heard of it, right? And so on May 1st, we're going to go back and we're going to relaunch 2 of these very powerful brands. We're integrating those brands into the newsroom so that we're going to have fabulous coverage. And the next thing you know, these are going to be real newspapers with quality content that cater to the Latino community. One of the other somewhat uniqueness about what we do in Orange, particularly in Orange County, is that there are a lot of cities in Orange County. Now, I'm the newest entrant, so I'm going to say a number, and you guys are all going to laugh because it's not true, right? Oh, I'm going to say there are 34 cities, and you're going to go, well, yeah, but if you include Placentia or something, it's not, you know. That's fine, but there are approximately 34, okay, good, so I got it right, 34 communities. We want to be the community newspaper in each one of those communities. Not necessarily in every one, because there's some competition, so it doesn't make sense. And it doesn't mean that we want to have a 30-page paper or whatever. We want to do it right, but we want to make sure that we own these communities. And quite frankly, we feel like we have a responsibility to community to get this right, for 2 reasons. One is, there's news that's going on in Irvine that, for whatever reason, doesn't necessarily make our paper, that deserves to be told. We want to make sure, and feel like we have a responsibility to tell that story. At the same time, to the business community, as a result of Macy's and Office Depot and Home Depot pricing up the value of these full-page ads in our newspaper, we've basically crowded out the mom and pop store from communicating and marketing through newspapers in our local community. This gives us an opportunity through these community newspapers, which will be delivered once a week, maybe on a Wednesday or maybe on Thursday, to buy an ad and actually promote themselves to the local community, right? And these aren't going to be multi-$1,000 ads. These are going to be very reasonable price ads. We've already launched this in 3 markets, and we're very proud of it. We're very proud of this. Alijo Viejo, the Tustin News, and Laguna Niguel News. If you think about it, the other thing that we changed is we don't want to just cover 40% of that group. We did it so that we would cover 90%. We want to go to businesses with a real solution to communicate with their local markets. Another innovation that we're doing, again, within the context of sort of the business, is custom content. Now, this has lots and lots of names, right? But to me, this is innovation about how a company or an organization advertises in the newspaper, right? It's one thing to buy an ad if you're Macy's and put in all these different products. But if you're JetBlue, you might want to tell a story, right? You might want to have sort of a little bit more of a communication. If you're Bank of America, you might want to communicate with people and inform the public about how to pay off student loans, right? And so that's hard to do in the context of an ad, but as an advertorial, we can actually tell that story quite well. And that's a big part of what we're doing. So I think this is an incredibly growing part of our business. I think it's going to continue to grow, and I think it's part of our core innovation. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to stand here and share some of what we're doing, and I look forward to being a part of this community for a very long time. Thank you.
The Orange County Forum is brought to you through the generous support of the Orange County Register and our sustaining partners. For more information about the Orange County Forum, call 949-588-9884. The Orange County Forum is a nonprofit organization. Your contributions are tax deductible.